Hello class, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's question of the day is, what is the last movie that you saw in a movie theater? Because someone asked me today and it was really weird to think about. The last movie I saw in theaters was Parasite back in February. So let me know what yours was in the comments below. Today we're going to talk about editing versus revising. We've already talked about revising quite a bit. Revising is one of the criteria you're going to be graded on. We have been doing revision exercises for homework and talking about ways to revise your papers in class. Your feedback that you get from me is guided towards revising. Basically, this whole project is about revision. Editing is something different. Editing, you are also making changes to your writing, but it's more sentence level changes. It's about word choice and grammar and spellings, and it is not something that we have really been focused on yet. Editing is still a really important part of the process, but there's a reason that we don't talk about it until really the week that your portfolio is due. Usually editing is the first thing that I really want to do with a paper. I write it all out and then I want to make it look pretty. I want to make everything shiny and perfect. I want to make sure that all the sentences are correct. So why aren't I teaching you about editing yet? This is supposed to be an English class, right? So why am I not teaching you about the passive voice and run-on sentences and comma splices? Basically, the reason that I don't talk about this yet is because I don't want you guys worrying about your grammar yet. I don't want you worrying about your word choices and the minuscule, sentence level stuff. I want you to be thinking about your whole paper. Revision is a lot more than just tweaking little things. It's a lot of grand scale reorganization. And in the revision process, you're still thinking about your ideas and what you're trying to say, rather than how you're trying to say it. And the sooner you start to worry about how you're saying things rather than what you're saying, the less likely you are to say, get rid of a paragraph that really isn't working for what you're trying to do, because you've already put so much effort into trying to make sure that you say it exactly the right way. If I tell you to go through the work to make every single sentence perfect, and then one of them doesn't work where you want it to, you're going to have to go through all again and make the new sentence perfect for where it is when you move it. So not only are you going to feel reluctant to say goodbye to anything that's not really working, it's a waste of our time if we're going through and worrying about this too soon in the process. So instead of thinking about grammar right now, which we will get to, I promise we will do it next week. Right now, it's better for us all to be thinking about, for example, the way that you've organized your essay. With a lot of first-year college students, I will see a lot of this kind of essay. We have the introduction here, and it starts out broad and it gets specific. We have body 1, body 2, and body 3, and those are all sort of like evidence, I guess, paragraphs. And then we have the conclusion, which starts out specific and goes back to broad. The thesis is usually right around here, and then you restate it here, and then bring it back out to the rest of the world. Never do this. Ever again. Goodbye. It's over. We'll never see it. My pen's not even working. This way of organizing your essay is a really good way to start out, and it's great for a rough draft. But when it comes to a final draft, it's repetitive and it's predictable. And it really doesn't suit all kinds of arguments in the way that it's going to suit the sort of arguments that you're asked to do in high school. Especially as you get deeper and deeper into whatever field you're studying, that 5-paragraph essay is going to do nothing for you, except maybe hold you back. It's still a good idea in, a persuasive piece of writing, which a social narrative is not. But in a persuasive piece of writing, it's still really important to have your thesis at the end of your introduction, because that's something that your readers are going to be looking for in a certain place. But it's really hard to do a good hook into a solid introduction if you're going to start out with some broad statement about the whole world. And likewise, if someone is reading 1,000 essays and everyone is starting theirs out with the 5-paragraph structure that we just talked about, your essay isn't going to stand out. So when we're doing social narratives, which are really a storytelling genre, this is a genre where you want to narrate what's going on in your life, you don't want to use this structure. It's not going to do anything for you. It's not going to benefit you in any way, and it's going to hide your beautiful, wonderful stories in a whole bunch of fluff and nothingness, and I shouldn't say garbage, but kind of garbage. So really go through your essay when you're revising and think about how you want to tell your story, how you would tell your story if you were just sitting down and talking to me about it. What would you do then? Because it probably wouldn't be to make a broad statement about the world and then narrow it into a very specific thesis about what your evidence proves, and then give 3 pieces of evidence and then restate your thesis. If you were telling me your story, you would want to tell me something that makes me interested in the beginning. You want to tell me parts that make me laugh. You want to, pace it out so that it builds suspense. So let's talk about some different ways that you can organize an essay. The most immediate option for social narratives is a very chronological way to tell it. So you tell the events in the order that they happened. So instead of thinking about your social narrative as something that's presenting evidence, you might want to think about it in the structure that we tell stories, which more often than not is chronological. So you may want to do something like this instead, where we start with exposition, we go into rising action, there is a climax, and Aristotle says that this is where we have recognition and reversal. So people realize things in a way that makes them change their understanding of the world. We have falling action, and we have the resolution or denouement. So take a minute when you're revising your social narrative and find that climax, that turning point. What is the moment that changed your understanding? What is the big reveal that you think should change other people's understanding? Put that at the climax, and then form the rest of your story chronologically around that. But even then, that doesn't mean that you have to put your essay in that order. You can still make a lot of interesting decisions about where you decide to drop your readers in, where you decide to start them out, the order that you decide to do things in. Maybe you want to do it completely backwards. Maybe you want to start in your falling action somewhere around here and have one of those record scratch freeze frame, I bet you're wondering how I found myself in this position moments. You can do that. You can do whatever you want. And really, you can still do a 5-paragraph essay if that's the thing you think will tell your story the best, but it better be a damn good 5-paragraph essay. So these are all things to keep in mind when you're doing your last week of revisions on your social narratives. And especially on Monday, when it's time to hand in your revision journals. A revision journal is something I'm going to ask you to do for every single one of the portfolios. It's basically a journal where you lay out your plan for how you're going to revise your final draft. And for portfolio 1, this is a big way of how I'm going to judge your work. I'm going to look at the revisions that you decided to do and then how they manifest in your final draft. So in your revision journal for Monday, you're going to answer 4 questions. The first question is, what feedback have you received? The second question is, what feedback has been the most useful? The third question is, what steps are you going to take to do these revisions and complete the revisions for your final draft? And the fourth question is, what is one risk you are going to take in your final revisions? And your risk can be anything. It can be big or it can be small. It should just be something that you're a little bit scared to do, and that you wouldn't necessarily do if I wasn't specifically asking you right now to take a risk in your writing. I think I'm done.
Let's just edit this out.
Yeah, I'll just edit it out.
I have to.
So remember to answer the question of the day, and I will see you all on Monday. Okay, I'll also put that in.